Hey, it's Verity here on my YouTube channel and blog Pretty Little Button. If you're new here, I make paper crafting tutorials for the everyday crafter. Today's card uses heat embossing with die cut inlay techniques. The die cut inlay I've used on this card has quite a simple shape, as I wanted to create cards that provide inspiration for this month's Facebook group challenge with Wow embossing powder, which is repeating patterns. However, you can adapt this technique for any die cut inlay you have in mind, so don't be afraid to experiment. So let's get started. The embossing glitter I'm using today is the Aquamarine Embossing Glitter from Tracy Scott, and this comes in the Gemstone Trio set. This is a beautiful aqua teal embossing glitter, and the trio also comes with a hot pink and a rich yellow embossing glitter too. To create the heat embossed die cut inlay, first we need to create an embossing glitter cardstock to die cut from. So I'm using my Wow clear ultra slow drying embossing ink to apply ink directly to a piece of cardstock. Now make sure you really smoosh the pad down onto the card to transfer plenty of ink before you cover it with the Aquamarine embossing glitter. Now as we are heating embossing glitter, it is best to start heating this from behind. This will allow the powder to melt, trapping the glitter into the powder without it blowing off. You can then heat from the front towards the end just to finish it off. This method is a great way of creating your own glitter cardstock to use in your papercraft projects. Now you can leave it with one layer of powder or repeat adding ink and glitter to add a further layer to intensify it. Bear in mind some glitter may transfer to your ink pad, so just bear this in mind. I tend to have two ink pads, one for messy embossing and one for clean embossing. To create the die cut inlay pattern, I'm going to use a set of nesting dies. These are Altenew nesting frame dies, and I've placed them onto my mat with the cutting side facing down, and I'm making sure that they're evenly spaced apart. Now it's best to use some low tack tape to temporarily attach them together. This will allow us to die cut it multiple times out of different cardstock and ensure that all the frames are the same size. So I've run the frames with my embossed glitter cardstock through my die cutting machine, and as you can see I have multiple die cut frames now. Without removing the tape though, I'm then running the dies through my die cutting machine again, but this time I'm using some white cardstock and some teal cardstock as well. After I've cut them all, I can now interchange the frames with one another to create a fun, interesting die cut inlay pattern for my cards. Now when die cutting, some glitter may transfer onto your other card that you die cut as well. There is a really easy way to remove this. I just take a clean rubber and rub away the glitter. It takes seconds but clears up your die cut pieces really well. For the inlay, we need to adhere the die cut stamp. So I've added some double-sided tape to a piece of scrap card. And now I'm just adhering the frames down, alternating them between the heat embossed die cuts and my white card die cuts. Once I've popped all the frames in, I'm just taking some scissors to trim off any excess of the scrap card that's showing. And now I have a fun die cut inlay feature to add to my cards. Now I'm also repeating this using the teal cardstock, and then any leftovers of the white and the teal card I can use to make a third panel. Now I made a third panel but I just didn't have time to turn it into a card today, but I've got it there to use in the future. For the floral stamps, I'm using the Hero Arts Dreams Will Blossom stamp set, and I've placed these into my MISTI along with some watercolour cardstock. I'm going to heat emboss these florals, so I'm using my clear ultra slow drying embossing ink to stamp the images, and as I'm using watercolour cardstock and it's a rough surface, I'm stamping this twice just to get a good clear impression. Of course I'm using my favourite staple powder, which is Opaque Bright White Embossing Powder from Wow, as this comes in super fine powder to capture all that detail in the stamp. After it's heat set, I'm going to start adding colour to the images. Now you can colour your images in whatever medium you prefer, but here I'm using my Zig Clean Colour Real Brush Markers. I like to work with one colour first and colour all of the parts of that stamp in before moving to another colour. So here I'm first colouring the leaves in green, and I've listed the pen colours I'm using on screen. I tend to lay the lightest colour down first and build up to the darkest colour before then going back and blending the colours out again to the lightest colour. You could do it the other way, it's whatever you prefer. After all the leaves were coloured, I'm going I'm colouring the florals in a lovely coral red colour combination. Again, I've started off with my lightest colour and then added the darkest colour in the shadows to blend out to give definition. I decided not to colour the inners of the flowers because I didn't really want to add another colour into my overall colour combination of the card design, and I think the white looks perfectly fine with the card. Once all the colouring was complete, these were then cut out ready to add to the card, but before assembling the card I wanted to add a little bit more interest to the background. An easy way to do this is to add some paint splatters. I'm using my Ganze Tambi Starry Colours palette and adding a combination of white and gold paint splatters. So for these cards, I'm adding the die cut inlay panels off to one side, so they're overhanging the edge, and foam mounting the florals on top of those. Now I'm using my guillotine to trim off the excess that overhangs, and this gives a really interesting design to the card. However, if you prefer, you can adhere the whole die cut panel fully onto the card front and not trim off any excess. Obviously the card design is your choice. The sentiments on these cards were from the Dreams Will Blossom stamp set, and I've heat embossed them onto black and white card using opaque bright white embossing powder or primary ebony embossing powder. And then once they were heat set, I fussy cut them out to then add to the front of the cards. For both of these cards, just to tie in with the paint splatters in the background, I'm using some Lucy's Card Sprinkles Glamorous Circles in Gold in a variety of sizes. And I'm scattering these around my card to help draw the eye in and around the design. Just using my Pick Me Up tool along with some Gina K Connect glue to adhere them down. I love how these two cards turned out, and I've also got another inlay panel to create a third card with in the future. You can easily switch up the shape and use any die you have in your stash, and why not try it with any embossing powder as well. Using an embossing glitter just adds a little bit more sparkle as well. I find these cards kind of make me feel like they're a little bit Christmassy. I think it's the colour scheme of the red and the teal, and it's not your traditional Christmas colour scheme. So I think I might use this in the future. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and why not subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to be notified when the next video is up. This was produced as part of my design team work for Wow Embossing Powder, and you can find a code for 10% discount to the shop on the screen. Why not check out this other video for some more inspiration. Until next time, happy crafting!